Well, in part two, I finished up by talking about how the U.S. was the only country that could possibly seek, gain anything by the tension and the possibility for war in the Andean region of South America. And I wanted to extrapolate my thoughts a little bit on that. And then I completely concur with Poder and O to a Tale. And like I said, you can read their work at upsidedownworld.org. And I think it's also important to note that to go a little bit further into how it would have worked, excuse me, it's possible that the response by Colombia to Venezuela, moving their troops closer to the border, could have been Colombia attacking the Venezuelan troops, or possibly engaging in some kind of border skirmishes in order to heighten the tension and turn it into a full-blown war. Well, obviously, in the case of Colombia versus Venezuela, Colombia's military, which essentially is just a wing or an arm of the United States military, would have completely outclassed and probably outmaneuvered the Venezuelan military, and probably would have led to an invasion and possible subsequent occupation of Venezuela. And none of this happened, mind you. But it seems like this is the way it could have turned out for the U.S., which again would have ended the Bolivarian Revolution, would have ended any kind of notion that the oil revenue of Venezuela belongs to the people of Venezuela and should be utilized for the benefit of the people of Venezuela very, very quickly. Even if Colombia had attacked, it had escalated to war, but Venezuela was able to rebuff the Colombian invaders, Venezuela and Ecuador combined, mind you. It still would have only been disastrous because there would have had to have been so much of Venezuela's wealth committed to the war machine, that every dollar committed to the war machine was a dollar that would have to be taken away or not contributed to the social programs that have made the Venezuelan Bolivarian Revolution so successful and so popular amidst the people of Venezuela. So I think that pretty much ties up those vines there. And when it comes to the response of America to the crisis, I mean, it was obvious how the Bush administration would respond, definitely in support of their good buddy Colombia, regardless of the human rights record of the state of Colombia. And John McCain, the Republican presidential nominee, was obviously the same way, and he was like, "I love Colombia. I've always loved Colombia. I want there should be a free trade agreement now. Colombia can do what it wants." It's a paraphrase, but that's essentially what he said. He sounded like he could not be more excited to back a state and a government rife with terrorist machinations. On the other hand, the Democrats, and I always like to skewer the Democrats the most because they're the so-called left variety of the spectrum, Hillary Clinton almost completely ignored the fact that the entire ordeal was, manifested because of Colombia's blatant violation of Ecuadorian territorial integrity. And then she said, a direct quote, "Hugo Chávez's order to send 10 battalions to the Colombian border is unwarranted and dangerous. The Colombian state has every right to defend itself against drug trafficking terrorist organizations that have kidnapped innocent civilians, including American citizens. I am hopeful that the government of Ecuador will determine that its interests lie in closer cooperation with Colombia on this issue." That's awesome. Good. That's like asking a burglar, a burglary victim to be like, I kind of hope that your interests will lie in closer cooperation with the burglar on this issue. Look, it's cut and dry, Hillary Clinton and Clintonian supporters. Colombia violated Ecuadorian, territorial integrity. While I agree that Chávez's order to send 10 battalions to the border, I don't necessarily know that it was dangerous, but it was unwarranted. And if it was dangerous, it was only dangerous in the sense that it might have given the Yankee gringos the excuse they needed to prompt their Colombian buddies into attacking Venezuela. Other than that, there's nothing wrong with sending troops to your border. Incidentally enough, I know a country that has thousands and thousands of troops and huge outposts and giant fences and an intense security apparatus all around its border. It's called the United States. The United States. That dirty country that moves troops close to its border. Hillary Clinton completely ignored the fact that the primary thrust of the issue was that Colombia violated international law. Had nothing to do with it. Had nothing to do with her interpretation. In fact, she, like I said, she thought that Ecuador should, hang out a little bit more with Colombia. Ludicrous, stupid, asinine. I cannot think of enough negative adjectives in the entire dictionary to possibly describe exactly what I think of Hillary. That's what I think of freaking Hillary Clinton's response. You just toss it away because it's so freaking juvenile. It's not even juvenile, it's infantile. How about that? Obama, on the other hand, and with Barack Obama, it's always the same. It's always these lukewarm, half-hearted, I don't really know what they mean stances on things. And he said, a direct quote again, "The recent targeted killing of a senior FARC leader must not be used as a pretense to ratchet up tensions or to threaten the stability of the region." That's I agree. Nothing should be used as a pretense to ratchet up, stability, tensions or threaten the stability of a region. On the other hand, there was no pretense that Colombia violated Ecuador's territory. It happened. Everybody admits that it happened, Barack Obama. Everybody. On the other hand, Barack Obama has, and like I said, I don't want to go on yet because I want to stress very wholeheartedly that Barack Obama's statement in that case, it just glosses over the real aggressor. It glosses over the real problem, which is that Colombia, acting very much in the vein and shadow of its military support of the United States, has decided that it can do whatever it wants, including violate international law, if it deems necessary in order to go after the terrorists. And Barack Obama doesn't really say anything about that within his statement. On the other hand, Barack Obama has taken a strong stance that military aid to Colombia should be related to the dismantling of paramilitary groups that had connections to the Colombian government, but he did not join other senators in demanding that Condoleezza Rice not certify that Colombia met human rights conditions, the conditions which would be prerequisite for military aid. He did not join them in Senator Dodd and a few others in their letter. So he takes a pretty strong stance, but not so strong that he actually puts himself out there and says, well, maybe they're not good enough. Obama has not been as bad on the leftist governments that have been elected in the South American region, saying that they've been a response to socioeconomic disadvantages that most of the general population of those countries share. He has been quite concerned about the plight of Afro-Latinos across the entire region, and he praised the Colombian government as well. He should, and as well they should be praised for on Afro-Colombian issues and putting on the fact that they established a cabinet position on these issues. They put an Afro-Colombian in the post of that cabinet post. But then that's all well and good, but he says nothing about Chavez, the fact that Hugo Chavez has done a lot on, and the government of Venezuela has done a lot on Afro-Latino issues as well, including putting a special provision in their constitution that will that gives minority groups such as indigenous groups and Afro-Venezuelans specific and special, and not necessarily special rights, but it guarantees them equal rights to other Venezuelans. On the fact that the Colombian army claims that it found 3 laptops that proved that the FARC and the Ecuadorian and Venezuelan governments were engaged in support of the FARC. If you read his article at VenezuelaAnalysis.com, and I'm sure it'll be on UpsideDownWorld.org very soon, you will see that and if you could read Spanish, go read the original translation of those documents, which apparently has been released. He says it doesn't mention anything about 300 million, which is the accusation. The accusation is that Hugo Chavez promised the FARC $300 million to buy uranium to make a dirty bomb. It says it doesn't say anything about 300 million. It doesn't say anything about a dirty bomb. It doesn't say anything about, uranium. All it says is 300 and a couple weeks, and they had been talking for a few weeks about hostage negotiations that would reach the 300s. Once again, the United States is getting its hands dirty in Latin America, and it's up to we as United States citizens to clean it up.